Today is Monday, July 28th. We're 1 week away from Cyber Summer Camp. But that doesn't mean we can't talk about the fun stuff this week in 3 important articles. The first one is Ingram Micro had some issues with their VPN. We're going to talk about what happened and what you can do to prevent anything similar happening to your business. The second story is going to be Qantas. Never heard of these people, but apparently it's a major airline. So I live under a rock, but if you don't, we're going to talk about what happened with some of their third-party providers and how it affected their business and the impact. The third story is going to be McDonald's. Luckily, I haven't applied there ever, but if I did, I might be part of their 64 million records potentially breached when researchers found that they were using default password 123456. And that's what we're talking about this week on the episode.
This is episode 13 of the DTF Cyber Podcast. I'm Damian.
This is Troy.
And it's your boy, Fern. Let's go. Are you guys familiar with Ingram Micro at all?
Yeah.
You are?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Great, big distributor.
Big distributor. One of the major ones, right? Yeah. There's Ingram Micro, there's Tech Data, there's a few other ones like D&H and
Polaris, Avant.
Yeah. But Ingram Micro is definitely one of the largest, right? If you're buying anything in the tech world from any VAR supplier, chances are their paperwork is running through Ingram Micro, very likely, or an Arrow or a TD SYNNEX, right? So those are the main ones. But in this particular article, allegedly, we have to say that because, we don't want to make anyone upset. But in this article, what they're talking about is Ingram Micro had an issue, and it affected their internal systems back on July 3rd. It was contained, right, by July 10th. So what was the issue? It was actually VPN.
Well, I don't know if VPN was the issue.
Well, okay.
It was a method of how these attackers came in.
Yeah, so VPN was not the issue, to clarify. VPN was the medium in which this played out. Is that better?
Sure.
Gotta be more specific, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was the attack vector for sure, but also it's not that we don't want to upset, Ingram Micro, because this was made into the news. We're not telling you something that's, hidden or secret, but we just want to make sure that we're talking about how this happened, because what I have seen is this is a very common, avenue of attack from attackers. So we're talking about, compromising a VPN, moving laterally, and going from system to system under the radar. So I'll let you get into the bits and bytes, Damian, but, this is becoming all too often and too common.
But dating back like a decade, right, Troy? I mean, this is the same problem that Target had with the HVAC provider, where they leveraged the VPN, the corporate enterprise VPN, to move laterally across the network. And so I believe that's what's happened here. So I guess the question is...
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things is, again, comes down to identity as the foundation, right? So identity usually has a big component of most breaches, right? In this case, either credentials were taken or a token was stolen or something where they replayed an attack against this VPN, and the system thought it was the actual employee when it was a threat actor. So again, an employee's identity was stolen or used to get unlawful or unauthorized access into the system, and then they were able to, move laterally and have free reign to deploy their malware and their, attacks internally.
Yeah, I don't think most people think about that. I think a lot of organizations believe that legacy VPN, once you have that, you're securely connected back into your network, which is true to some extent. But with the introduction of zero trust network access and the new architectures, you could limit that lateral movement.
So. Well, so here's something interesting that I saw. Maybe I want to get your guys' take on it. So take a half step back. I read something that said the attackers aren't breaking in. They're just opening their front door. They are essentially taking the keys and popping in the keyhole and unlocking it. So whereas I think most people think, or at least maybe as an average Joe, an average Fern, as we like to say on the show, you think of people, when people break in, you think of they're knocking down doors, they're breaking glass, they're jumping through windows, like if it was a home, for example. But some of the best attackers aren't doing that. They're just stealing identity, they're taking credentials, and they're getting in. So maybe the first question, or what I'm thinking of, is if I have a 10,000 employee or 10,000 users in my organization, and we're using VPN because we're remote, and it's 2025 people. It's no longer 2019. So tons of people that are remote. What should I be thinking about when it comes to managing identity with a VPN?
So I think your analogy is correct. Let's say you have 10,000 employees and they all have access to that house or office.
Yep.
Do they also have access to every single room in that office once they get through the front door?
They shouldn't.
They shouldn't, right?
They shouldn't.
And I think that's a concept that we're trying to approach here, is like, instead of allowing users through that front door and then having access to everything inside the office, why not have granular access into every single room? And so if you come in and say, hey, I'm Fern, I got my key card, I'm in the front door, that only allows you one path to go to one place, and maybe that's your cubicle. And that's it.
Okay, which makes sense, because why should I be in the kitchen? Why should I be in the laundry room?
Well, I know why you want to go to the kitchen, but
yeah,
should they allow you there?
Because the Fern's gotta eat.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest sayings is that hackers don't break in, they log in. And Hollywood has us believe that every attack is some highly sophisticated Nmap with, some follow-on exploit that is a 0-day, et cetera, et cetera. But what happens is your normal employee reuses passwords for their Facebook and their LinkedIn and their Jira and their Snowflake and business and personal applications. So they're using that same password across many things. And so if one of those sites has a breach, that employee's password is stolen, hackers can then replay that password against enterprise applications or enterprise services like a VPN, and sometimes they have luck there as well. So, the best VPNs that I have, some of the ways to thwart that is through a multi-factor authentication on your VPN, which, also you need to know where your employees normally log in. So if I'm logging into my corporate VPN and I 99% of the time come from Las Vegas, and I all of a sudden start logging in from South Dakota or New York, the system should be questioning that. Maybe it should be sending me another MFA push or some other kind of second or third factor of authentication, verification that I am who I'm supposed to be. I think that, passwords, are the root of the problem, but at the same time, there are technological ways around that. And then user education, not to replay passwords, and then testing them is a big part of that as well.
Yeah, I think security in layers, right? That's what you're saying, Troy. It's not just the password. It's also maybe some telemetry that gives you user behavior, where they're logging in from. So, if I see Troy logging in from China, maybe that should set off an alert.
That's
a third factor.
Not visiting China anytime soon. No offense to China, but I'm not coming.
A lot of companies have specific China policies. I mean, we do. You got to take a different laptop. You can't take your company one.
Really?
But what about certificates? So you can only log in from machines that have that specific certificate. You can't just
absolutely
log in from some machine that's unknown to the organization. So there's a lot of layers that you can put in there. And then on top of that, having really just a granular approach of not allowing, once you get in through that front door, not being able to see everything and go to everything.
Yeah, well,
you do have some folks that need access to multiple rooms, especially developers or, people who are creatives that need access to, multiple systems and servers and things like that. So they do have elevated privileges, which again goes back to identity. Are your privileges and your entitlements mapped appropriately to the role that person is using? And then if they move around within the company, are those entitlements revoked and reprovisioned as needed in the new role? Because Edward Snowden is a great example of someone who moved from job to job and just snowballed all of his entitlements as he went along. The government never revoked his privileges as he moved from job to job. So at the end of it, he had access to all of these governmental systems, which we know he stole, proprietary confidential data and left the building with it. So that's the same thing that's happening in corporate America, where employees have way too much access. And if their password is compromised, the threat actors have access to a trove of data that they should not have access to.
A couple things I want to touch on. Troy, you mentioned MFA. There are a lot of people that use cell phones, not through an authenticator app, right? Not through like a RSA token type thing. They use text, right? There's a lot of things that I have on my phone, not very important things. We'll say that, but there are a lot of things, a lot of companies that use like the banking, like banking online has it where you have to go into the app and you get a special message in the banking app itself if you're in the app, right? But there's other things that do a text to your phone. And one thing that I've seen a lot more recently is SIM swapping, right? So let's just say someone did a SIM swap on a device that is or belongs to the person that they are targeting, right? Then they try and log in with MFA, as you said, and they get a text. The threat actor gets a text. That's a terrible situation. So, would you?
Yeah, and I would say, Fern, I just want to say that SIM swapping is a constant conversation piece, right? Mm-hmm. And it's often used in cryptocurrency schemes because there's so much money at risk in crypto. But the thing about SIM swapping, and the reason it is absolutely rare, is that your phone stops working. If I'm able to contact your cell phone provider and swap the SIM for your cell phone, you instantly know it because your cell phone no longer works. Now, it may take you a few minutes to realize it, maybe take you 30 minutes, an hour, but you know it right away. There's no doubt something has happened. And so these type of attacks are usually withheld for high profile individuals, like the founder of Twitter, and then cryptocurrency type schemes where there's a lot of money at risk. And these threat actors move very quickly in those cases, but we're not seeing SIM swapping in enterprise attacks. We're not seeing it in, mid-market or mid-level attacks. Usually this is something that's really held in reserve for high level targets, I think.
Yeah. Not saying that it won't happen, but I think it's a lower probability and it could happen. Mm-hmm. Right. So,
it could absolutely happen. Yeah. It happens a lot more than we'd like to say, but it is rare. It is rare, and it's usually held for
I don't think a lot of
targets.
Organizations for their systems leverage SMS text as the second factor. It's usually an app that you'd have to use, right?
Okay.
I understand why the banks do it because it's just easier if they don't have their own app. Or a lot of people don't use the banking app or mobile app on their phone, and so it's just easier. But it's better than nothing.
Yeah, no, that's true. I was just thinking like, if someone's being targeted, like a high profile target, and it's really quick, and obviously they'll know if their phone stops working. Or hey, let me ask you this. So, because I've never, I guess, seen this in live action. If you do a SIM swap, the phone no longer receives calls. But we'll just say they're home on Wi-Fi. Like say someone's working from home and they're on their home Wi-Fi. Technically, if they have Wi-Fi calling on, they can still make phone calls, right? And they can receive or send and receive, or they can use the internet to like scroll. So unless you actually need to physically make a call on your phone, would you actually be aware that
because it would say not you'd have the SOS symbol.
Oh, so okay. Yeah. So it'll say service is not available.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not as it's
I mean, you may think, hey, I have poor signal or something going on. But yeah, you'd know.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that we as a community are getting away from SMS as a second factor. It is absolutely not secure because you could also have somebody manning in the middle, intercepting your traffic somehow, or looking at your text messages, There's other malwares like Pegasus and other, cell phone malware that can steal your text messages en route. So it's not just SIM swapping that's the threat to SMS two-factor. I think that we are moving into a new era of FIDO2 RSA keys via a TPM module in the phone, some type of an app or something that's going to be able to be a lot more secure than SMS. If you have an option,
I'm surprised
to use SMS or an app, I would definitely go with an app.
Exactly. Every phone should have that are already built in, right? Instead of having to carry a key, a UB key or something that, why not build that module into a phone? But anyways, there was something else that you mentioned, Troy, I wanted to get back to. There's a lot of people that use the browser to save their passwords. And I've seen where there's been malicious extensions that go and steal those passwords.
Oh, yeah.
And you actually don't realize, hey, your passwords are gone. And so that's the first way. It's not necessarily, hey, I'm reusing passwords, but maybe I'm saving my passwords to a insecure password vault. Mm-hmm. And now your password's out there. So it's for single factor stuff. That's easy to get into. Yeah. Then the MFA pieces where you have, maybe your phone, the SIM swapping would be one of the avenues. Maybe there's another way. There's sometimes the second factor is email. They email you a code.
Yeah, I get that too.
That's never good. Because your email is the first thing that gets compromised by threat actors in a business email compromise. So, email tends to be the easiest route to compromise somebody.
So should people be looking at ways that, or maybe like path that a threat actor can go when they're determining how they want to manage identity? Right? Like what's the best way to kind of look down?
So I'd look at all the layers and say, okay, if this layer is defeated, what contingencies do I have? If layer 1 and layer 2 are defeated, then what else do I have to protect? And how do I become proactive of maybe one of these layers not working?
Okay.
Right. So that's the approach I kind of take, because you can analyze these things forever. But it becomes a risk versus cost, analysis. Mm-hmm. What is my overall risk?
And then there's a whole new practice or a new thought of threat modeling. So you threat model and you model out all the threats that, like to your identity stack that could potentially be an issue, and you work those into your security engineering roadmap to make sure that you have the most common ones covered, as an example. But Damian, do you remember the Snowflake issue about a year and a half ago? There was this threat actor used an info stealer in the browser for years, collecting passwords. And what they did was just right at a very specific time, used them against all these folks using the Snowflake platform. And there was massive breaches because of it. And they were, collected them over a long period of time, and then they used them in a single kind of campaign. It was very impactful. A lot of companies lost a lot of data. It was very public in the news, but that's exactly what you're talking about. So if you are storing passwords in your browser, be aware that you could run into an issue there.
Is the Snowflake incident what caused their stock to plummet, or was that something with their CEO?
I don't have any correlation clue on that one, but I will say that, it was very public. There was a public outcry and, hurry to patch and mitigate. So, it certainly brought some negative attention. But,
it impacted a lot of
something happens like that every day.
And when those incidents happen, especially for third-party vendors, even your customers will go and ask you, are you using these third-party vendors, and to what extent, and are you impacted? And then you're expected to put out a statement of what your position is.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember there was something that happened a while back, and I'm looking at it right now, and it was June of 2022 where their stock plummeted. I don't remember the exact reason. I feel like there was something that happened. I don't remember if it was cyber related or not, so I figured I'd ask, but I guess kind of unrelated, just something that popped up in my head. But
so one other thing I want to talk about before we jump to the next topic. There's a lot of people that use personal VPNs. I don't know if do you use a personal VPN when you travel? Or you don't travel?
I do. No. Sure. I do. Yep. I mean, it's not personal. Yeah. It's just like,
No. Obviously I have ways to secure my traffic, but there's a lot of people, I see this on social media where, influencers are pushing VPN services.
NordVPN.
That's one of them. I don't know much about Nord, so I don't want to say anything bad about them, but there's probably thousands out there. I think one of the things you had to be careful of is you're trying to protect your privacy.
Yep.
Maybe from the hotel network, which is not a bad thing, but who are you giving that access to all that data to? Who's seeing that?
My VPN provider.
Yeah, your VPN provider. So just make sure you look into it enough to trust that VPN provider is not hosted in Russia or somewhere that may want to steal your information in transit.
Yeah, but how do you know?
Good question.
Because like with DeepSeek, right? They had to do a lot of research to see with the traffic that was being sent back and forth, right? And that takes tools and effort that, researchers have access to, but an average Fern may not. So, maybe it's just in this case, going with the more reputable ones. And we talked about this before, is not necessarily going for the free services or the free applications that you can find online, because a lot of times when they're free,
they're making money some other way.
Yeah, right. So in a lot of cases, if someone's offering a VPN service for free, chances are your data, your traffic is being sold, right? So I think it's just important to think about is free download, probably not the best idea. In reality, if you told someone, hey, pay $5 a month for this service or $20 a month, or pay nothing, but the risk is this, I think a lot of people would be like, well, I'd rather pay $20. I'd even pay up to $50. Some people might.
So if you trust your home network and you're tech savvy, you could pretty much just VPN your traffic back to your home when you're traveling and then out through your home network.
Yeah, I think most people in the tech industry could probably do that, but that's a very small percentage of the total population of people, right? So I think those people will be kind of forced into the bucket of paying for a service, but most people don't understand the risk of using a free tool versus paying for one. So hopefully they're listening to this podcast, because the people that listen to this podcast know better.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you're going to set up a VPN server here in the studio and have all our subscribers use it for free.
Not for free, because this already costs money and it doesn't pay us anything. we gotta flip the switch somewhere at some point. So who knows? But it's good to think about, because I don't think the average person really thinks about that. And not necessarily the average person. I just think in general, I think people are looking for a tool, and in most cases, have you been to Sprouts lately? It's expensive. You guys have been to, I've heard it funny. It might be one of you guys, Whole Foods, they called it whole checks because it's so expensive to shop there. But things are expensive, so I can understand people trying to cut corners. VPN, if you're using it, is not the way. And hopefully the company you work for offers a service or provides a service provider, like a VPN service, maybe like Cisco AnyConnect, I don't know, to help you through that. So anything else that you guys want to touch on with
I would say hopefully they're not using legacy VPN, and they've already started to move towards a zero trust network architecture.
When you say legacy, what do you mean?
Exactly what you just mentioned. Like,
oh, those guys
opening up a VPN into a network and being able to go east-west across that network is exactly what happened here in this situation.
So the name that should now remain unnamed is considered legacy in this case?
Well, in this article, it wasn't a Cisco, so I don't want to, throw Cisco under the bus. And I don't know. I'm pretty sure Cisco probably has a solution that's more of a zero trust solution. That's not any connect, or maybe even built in. I don't know, Troy, if you know what their architecture looks like these days. It's been a while.
Yeah, no, I just think that the point of that is, if you're going to just open a tunnel to anywhere, just any, once you get access to that tunnel, then that's no bueno. So used to be, if employees connected to a VPN, it could be an IPsec tunnel, could be a GRE tunnel, could be some other type of communication protocol wrapped in an encrypted stream. But once you got into the company, you could go anywhere. There was very little control over what you had access to once you got there. And what Damian is saying, and which is this massive digital transformation and journey that I've been on for the last 10 years, every company that I touch is getting away from that, going to zero trust architecture, which again, the foundation of is identity, because you can't map access until you map roles and entitlements. But mapping zero trust to the things that employees need to do their job at the time they need it is so critical. It limits your blast radius. So if that employee is compromised, they're not going to get to the crown jewels. And it's going to be able to help you figure out where those issues are faster. So if you're looking into VPNs for your employees, or somehow for your remote employees to connect to your enterprise applications in your data center or your office, be looking at zero trust. CTNA is a product, but zero trust network access is out there, and that is the next generation, the future of how to connect to your enterprise.
Okay. We're going to have to bring on a sponsor for Zero Trust, right? There's plenty of companies out there. So if they're listening and you guys are looking for someone to talk about how your stuff works, let us know. Just a little plug. So I guess we'll move on to the next article. And so Qantas. Is that how you say it? I think it is. I'm pretty sure that it is. As the joke is, I have never traveled outside of the US except for Canada. So, like I said in the beginning, I live under a rock. So when I saw this article, I didn't realize how large this company is, right? This airline. So here's a quick summary. In early July, a third-party contact center platform was breached. So up to 6 million records were exposed. The number is actually 5.7. As of July 9th is what they had mentioned. So let's see here. It was personal service records, nothing financial, no password information. So that's the good news. But the bad news is it was a third-party risk that caused the issue. So very similar to what we talked about earlier with Target, we're seeing it again. So, what's the deal? Should companies be looking more closely into the companies that they partner with? Because I've had it where you receive an Excel spreadsheet of 150 questions that talk about third-party risk, and you have to fill it out. And it's like a whole survey, right? And those are not fun to fill out, but they're out there, right? And a lot of companies now require that you have certain levels of certification, like a SOC 2 compliance, right, in order to even work with these other companies. So there's that. But to me, there are companies out there that exist that offer SOC compliance, almost like a checkbox. And I'm curious if a lot of the reasons why we're seeing third-party risk pop up in this fashion is because there are companies out there that are getting compliance, checkbox compliance, but they're not actually doing the work. Do you guys think that was
I gotta tell you, compliance and security are two different things, right? You can be absolutely compliant, still have a massive breach. Compliance is just checking boxes and saying at a point in time you had certain things in place. But this is where we diverge so much in the industry is, people think about cybersecurity as a compliance standard. I have SOC 2, I have HIPAA, high trust, PCI. I have all these documents somewhere in a drawer that say that I do what I should do. Well, that's not security at all. Security is threat detection, incident response, threat hunting, detection engineering, looking at, what's actually happened, what threat actors are trying to do to your company. So that's why I love to separate compliance and incident response, what I call operational security in my purview, because they're completely different. And what happens is when you try to go get budget or you try to talk to your leadership about certain investments we need to make, all of a sudden there's this conflation of, well, why do we need to invest more in cybersecurity? We already have all of this compliance stuff. We're good, right? No, we're not good, right? We have these gaps, and that's according to the MITRE ATT&CK framework and the NIST cybersecurity framework. It shows you that you have these gaps, and that's why we invest in technology to fill those gaps and to see more, get more visibility, and to stop threats faster, and to have resilience by eradicating the threat actors faster. Compliance and security are completely separate, and they do get conflated.
I think in this case, because when I look at it, I'm obviously I'm responsible for, the security operations piece of it, but I can't be responsible for somebody else's third party operations. And I think there's a gap there where, okay, we do third party risk analysis, have the third parties fill out these questionnaires, but Troy, a company, they're not going to be able to manage that for the third parties. You have to kind of trust that the third parties are going ahead and doing what they say they do and hopefully meet those standards. I think what has to happen is probably if you're worried about that, you have to audit those third parties more often. The problem, though, with that is you may have thousands of third party services. You can't.
And I think third party audits are so misleading as well, because again, point in time, you go sit and you look at somebody's screenshot and you look over their shoulder, you're not seeing what's actually missing. Here's what I do. I usually prioritize my vendors by those who have logical access to my company. Like the HVAC company for Target, they had VPN access into Target. That is a third party that is connected to your business. That's not a third party you do business with that you don't have any connection with that could not hurt you. That is somebody who physically is attached. If they're physically attached, I'm going to be pen testing that attachment. I'm going to be looking for anything suspicious in their emails. I'm going to be sending all this, offensive security stuff at them to make sure that they do have the protections in place. And I'm going to be doing some scans to see if their laptops actually have, endpoint detection and response. They're not malware laden. If we see that, we cut them off. There's got to be a lot of checks and balances from a physical side, looking at what they have rather than just taking for granted that they tell you they have endpoint protection on every computer, which could be a lie, right? That's just how that looks at. And when it comes to,
mm-hmm. Yeah, I was gonna say, especially in this case where the third party has access to 6 million records, there needs to be tighter controls. So go back to zero trust, right? Should one account have access to so one vendor account, should that have access to all 6 million records at the same time?
No, this is like if Fern gets into the house, right? Bedroom, kitchen, laundry room.
Well, it depends on what the vendor does. I mean, it may need to have access to all the records to give the outcome that they've paid for. It could be some kind of summary software. It could be dashboarding software. It could be something that has to look at all the records to give you the business value for the product that you've invested in.
Yeah, but shouldn't that be mapped at some point? Or I guess who's responsible for understanding that? Because if someone's connecting to your network, so when you think of B2B sales, you think of sending a PO to a company, they send you a product, they're not signed into your network. They might have some information, but it's just general business information like billing address and things like shipping address. So I'm not necessarily worried about that. But if someone is tied into your network through a VPN, right? And this is exactly what you're talking about, Troy, is when they're essentially attached to the hip like a keychain, they have access to your systems, right? And they have hands on keyboard. That's where the risk comes in. But based on what they're given access to, who's on the hook to make sure that access is limited? Obviously it has to be the first party, right? The primary that is offering the access, but isn't that just extra work where for the company that is offering the business, right?
No, absolutely. I think that every major enterprise has, third-party risk management people now. This becomes such a discipline that you have massive teams in third-party risk that are looking at exactly those things. I'll use a SIM product as an example. We all know the big gorilla in the room when it comes to SIM. I won't name any names, but if that SIM company, if they have some type of professional services coming in to help you, correlate or help write rules or something like that, they're going to have access to everything in your SIM. That could be terabytes and terabytes of data. That is the crown jewels of your company. That's just an inherent danger of having somebody come in and help you configure and set up that software. But that's where you have to have the watchers looking over their shoulder, making sure that they, do what they say they're supposed to do. They don't take any data they shouldn't take. And you got to have the monitoring in place to make sure they're doing what they say they do.
I think what you do there is you only give that contractor access to your asset that has your controls that is in your environment. And so that they're not just logging into all of your logs using their own personal laptop or company issued laptop that is outside the organization. Because in that way, if they download it to that machine, you have better controls from obviously limiting any data exfiltration off the machine.
Yeah. So it definitely becomes an issue. So I ran into this, and I know exactly who Troy's talking about, but we ran into a situation where we had sold this particular product to an organization, and they were asking for services, but it was a healthcare organization, and there are very special requirements that have to be in place to work in this space, because like what Troy mentioned is the data you have access to. We had to actually forfeit the purchase, right? And this was this was like 8 years ago. We had forfeited because we couldn't offer the services for this provider because they were very, very special services because of the type of data that they were touching. So I guess random side story, but it's the same. Like, Troy describes it now, and I'm thinking back, like, now it makes sense, right, on why we ran into this situation. So, but the type of data you have access to, like Troy said, is pretty much anything and everything, right? So there's background checks, I'm sure, that have to be done. But what are the other things that people should think about when they're looking for a provider to help them with their services? Like, it's not just it can't be a checkbox, right? But if it can't be a checkbox, it ends up turning into time and money before you even get to the services, right?
Yeah,
so,
sometimes that slows down the deal, right? Maybe you need something done right now, but then by the time you actually get through all the paperwork, you're, 6 months away, a year away potentially on some of these deals.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's not an easy route to go, I don't think. But
well, I think it's pretty apparent that in this, podcast today, we have two stories of third-party risk, issues, and they continue to plague us. I think that we need to, as a community, figure this out and have more transparent sharing. Here's the reason why we have such a big challenge in third-party risk is because nobody talks about the breaches or the things that we don't hear about in the news. They want to keep all that stuff private. They don't share threat intelligence. They don't share tactics and tips from the threat actors. The threat actors share stuff very openly on the dark web. If you see these guys talking, it's like a bunch of folks, just sharing everything they can about how to attack companies. Companies, on the other hand, keep that stuff so hidden that, you've got 100 companies defending against the same attack, that are not sharing that what happened or how they stopped it or what they observed and all that stuff. And so it really puts us all behind the eight ball. And I think that, having some type of third-party risk management software that's constantly monitoring your vendors and alerting you if they do have a breach is so crucial. Plus, being able to, have those checks and balances from a technology level. If you have somebody connected into your environment, being able to interrogate that connection to make sure they're doing what they say they're doing to protect your company. It's the only way you can do that.
Yeah, and I think there are some products out there now and some new startups that are in that space. So, do your research, obviously. I'll say this, though, because there's, last episode we were talking about starting your career.
Mm-hmm.
How many people actually come out of a cybersecurity program and say, hey, I want to do third-party risk? So there's a huge opportunity there. There's lots of jobs. Everybody comes out thinking they're going to be a pen tester. But actually, there's probably a higher need for third-party risk and analyzing risk within organizations.
Yeah.
And it's growing.
I think.
Absolutely.
Especially with all the business, going around, someone has to kind of be the watchdog in a lot of these cases. Because if you're not on a third-party risk team, it kind of just becomes an extra job for someone in security, right? So I don't think
typically it's part of security, or it's like a combination of security and procurement, but it's mostly in security.
Okay, but it's not like if your organization isn't large enough to have a dedicated team, I guess my thought is it kind of falls on the shoulder of someone on the security team, right? So if you're looking to get into security, right, and you have this experience, I think it becomes valuable for these businesses that may not have a dedicated team. You can demonstrate you've done this work for this period of time, and it might actually help you get into other areas of the business on the security side, like maybe more on the engineering front, right? So maybe just food for thought, like kind of what you said.
Yeah, I mean, two different skill sets, right?
Well,
so somebody who's got an engineering mindset versus an analytical risk analysis mindset are two different personalities. So I don't want to have people think, oh, I'm going to start in like a GRC risk analysis role and then move over to engineering, because you may not be cut out for it.
Okay. So yeah, we'll take a half step back and say, if you're looking to get in, GRC, third-party risk, is a very good place, a very good avenue that's often neglected because it's not the pen tester in a hoodie or network engineering or security side that most people think of when they think of security, right?
Yeah. And I would say there's more abundance of jobs on that side.
Yeah. And the best part is like you said, you don't have to necessarily be very technical on the engineering side, right? You can be, so we know a few people that came from finance, actually. So if someone's in finance and they're looking to get into security, someone that we know very well came from the finance side through I don't forget the name of the company, but we'll say a big four firm that found their way into security as a result of a lot of the job description stuff from the finance role that they had translating into a GRC role. And we'll leave it at that. So something for the people to think about if you're in finance, maybe looking to get in security. GRC might just be your ticket in. And this person, by the way, is now a CISO. So interesting. So we talked about third-party risk with Qantas and the fact that there are a lot of things that people should consider, right, around third-party risk. As Troy said, compliance is not security. So if these partners and vendors have the compliance, you can't necessarily expect that what they're saying is 100% all the time, because it could have been a point in time. So the onus is on the business to at least dive into it a little bit deeper, depending on the access that they have to your organization, and determine if there's additional steps you need to take to protect your business. Because at the end of the day, regardless of who the third party is, if something happens, it's falling on the organization that is in this case, the first party. So CYA, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, I mean, even sometimes they give you the policies and the things that they follow, but even you as a first party don't follow up, right? You don't do your basic things to maintain security.
Oh, well, that's a story for another day, right? That's getting back to the basics, I think, is what you're kind of talking about.
Well, I mean, there may be some simple stuff like, you got to look at the contracts. I mean, if we go back to cyber insurance, I know this is another topic we can go on for an entire episode on, but if you're looking at cyber insurance, how many times you got to fill out these forms to say, here's all the controls I have, here's my, trying to figure out your security posture so that they can assess risk and then assign, your cyber premiums, your insurance premiums. But then what if you answer something wrong? And then you have an incident. Oh. And you find you're not covered anymore.
That's a bad situation to be in. Yeah. Well, let's talk about cyber insurance. I've got a funny story there. Someone or an organization got popped. They didn't actually have what they needed, and they had a rush purchase for 15,000 licenses, I think is what the number was. Crazy stories. But we'll get on to the next crazy story. Not 15,000 seats, but 64 million? I think is what it was. Let me find it here. Again, third party, and maybe this is the theme today, third party risk. This one now involves McDonald's. They had an AI hiring chatbot that was breached. And what's interesting about this one is the default credentials were never changed. Luckily for these guys, it was security researchers that found this issue. But we don't know if anything was done before, right? So I guess that's interesting. But 64 million applicants, information was exposed, and these researchers opened up 7 records, 5 of which contained PII. So safe to say, very likely, of those 64 million, a lot of personal information was at risk. Now, there's no description of anything that happened or anyone that had done anything. So hopefully we're hoping.
Well, they don't know.
Yeah.
But this goes back to what I just said. If you don't do something as simple as, hey, changing the default password, then whose fault is that? Is that the third party?
Well,
I mean, it might have been documented to say, here's the default password. We recommend that you change it. Now, should they have forced that password change? Probably. But how many people?
Yeah, but that's have putting some guardrails in there that is, overcoming common sense. You should know when you install a new software.
No, but Troy, look at this. Like, how many people still have default passwords on their home routers?
Yeah, that's the problem. That is a problem, I should say.
No comment. Actually, I don't know.
So reminder.
Note to self, you
this,
guys, if you're listening up, make sure you change those default passwords.
Change the default passwords. And if you haven't changed your password in years because that router has been sitting there, your Wi-Fi has been sitting there, go change it. Change it right now.
Yeah, just log into it, right?
Yes,
log into it and change it. To be honest, I don't really know any of my passwords. They're all thumbprints, fingerprints. If you ask me to get into any of my accounts, I like.
I do. I forget them too because I have these really complex passwords and I forget. So most times I'm always hitting forgot password.
Yeah, reset. You're the reset password. Yeah,
reset the password.
Well, that's definitely not what these guys did. And so, just to be clear, it wasn't McDonald's, right? It was a company that they were using for their hiring, right? So
who ultimately is responsible for changing the password? Was it McDonald's or was it the third party? Or was the third party only providing a service?
Well, according to the article, McDonald's was distancing themselves from the situation, and they're putting it on this third party, saying this wasn't us. Like, it wasn't our system. It was, we're sending our applicants through your system, and that's where the issue came from. But the bottom line
that makes sense. So if you think about it, it's a big AI system that's helping them, take applicants and sort them and look at them as a service. And then that would be an internal process for that company. They should have changed the default password. I think that's, what I read from the article is what it seemed like. But, this is a little bit deeper than that, because if you think about, it's a great story about AI and how AI is vulnerable to these type of attacks. As we look at more and more, we're handing power over to artificial intelligence to sort, summarize, and do all this stuff. We're forgetting that AI has the same foundational configurations that need to be fixed or updated in that process. And so are we going to see more of this, Damian?
I think we're going to see more chatbot prompt hacking. I've seen a lot of videos on that where you try to trick the chatbot into giving you information.
Yeah, that happened recently where someone actually got the information. I forget, because I kind of glazed over the article, but there was a bounty. I think it was like 50,000 if you can get something out of the chatbot, and the person successfully did.
I've seen capture the flags now that are centered around AI chatbots, where if you can trick it into giving you certain information, you get points.
Yeah,
those are pretty cool.
Well, yeah, but I guess maybe that's for like another full episode. I guess this one's maybe more so AI and recruitment specifically.
So it's a company like McDonald's, they're getting tens of millions of applicants, if not just here in the United States, but probably globally.
Yeah.
Right. So how do they sort through those just to make sure that, hey, this is the right applicant, they're a fit? We joke about, having the right keywords in your resume just to get past the recruiters, or just to get past. Well, that's all being done by AI now, where that screening is happening. And so if you have millions coming in, you can't have one person going in there and just checking everything manually. You're going to have an automated system that does that.
Yeah. Well,
and I think the key here is don't trade convenience. Don't trade security for convenience, right? And we're allowing ourselves to become numb to basic fundamentals by saying, "Oh, this makes our life easier." I agree. McDonald's needs a software like this because they can't handle the volume. But at the same time, are we lowering our standards of security by the convenience of just push button, get data?
So let me ask you guys this, because I think maybe this is where it fell apart, and this may be where the disconnect happened for them in particular. Is this is an HR service, right? It's not as though someone went to the technology team and said, "Hey, we're spinning up these services. We need access to these tools. We need access to AWS or Azure. We have these requirements," where IT has to get involved and design, implement, deploy, right? So I think that is one typical case where if someone comes to a technology team and says, "Hey, we're looking to spin up this service, help us build it and deploy," right? So we can offer it to our clients or whatever. That, I think, is one situation where most things do not get overlooked. Now, in this case, HR says, "Hey, we need help." they don't actually have to go to the technology team to have them build or have any sort of governance around anything.
Yeah, but they should still be involved in the conversation.
Well, so they should be involved in the conversation. But if someone says, "Hey, we're gonna buy this service," that's it. Technology might just say, "Well, okay, cool. Like checkbox. Yeah, if we don't physically have to give you access or give you storage space or carve out lunch for your stuff or give you access to anything, any buckets." Just do it, swipe the card, right? Whatever you got to do.
Fern, are you sure you're not a CISO? Because you're starting to sound like one. I'm just saying that was very articulate for coming from a security professional here.
I've been hanging around a lot of security professionals, but, the one thing that I've learned is that the people in security, it's not about knowing everything in security. It's about understanding how security can impact the business. And when I see this article, what I think of is that the fact that security may not have even gotten a phone call.
That's right.
Technology may not have even gotten a phone call.
This is the foundation of shadow IT, right? Shadow IT.
Troy and I see that all the time.
It's easy now to put it on a credit card.
Yeah, they just pop up. Oh, wait a second. Who's using that product?
Yeah. So maybe that's where this is like no one had to call technology at all. No one even called security because they said, "Hey, we can just buy this service and we're good to go. It's going to help us do our job and then we're done." So if no one calls technology and technology isn't even aware of it, that's where it gets overlooked.
So here's the thing, right? Shadow IT, like Troy said, is a big deal. And if you don't have the ability to see the shadow IT, that is a security gap. And so, one of the things I'm always looking out for are applications that pop up that may have high risk, or applications that pop up that may potentially leak data or leverage AI that's not approved. Remember, we talked about previous episodes, AI governance committee.
Yeah.
And so now this is obviously an AI tool with a lot of data. If it never went through an AI governance committee, didn't go through third-party risk, that was probably the big gap. But now we're all speculating, right? Because we don't know.
We don't. Allegedly. We're just say that. Allegedly.
We just know that.
And I love McDonald's cheeseburgers. They're my favorite, so I'm not gonna even assume on this one.
Ugh.
Ugh. Have you seen the Big Mac challenge? How fast can you eat a Big Mac?
Mm-mm.
No. How fast can I not go through a drive-through at McDonald's? Actually, I'll take
double cheeseburger is my favorite. I mean, sorry, QPC.
McMuffins, 2 McMuffins for $5. I will not confirm or deny if I've had a few of those recently, but that's probably
that is absolutely my pre-golf meal right there.
Well,
I'm gonna veg out. I love McDonald's. I'm a huge fan. So if you're listening, McDonald's, some free coupons at the DTF podcast.
The DTF podcast. Maybe they can make a burger named after Fern, the average Fern burger.
The average.
I did see Raina. I don't know if you guys watch Raina, the competitive eater. She ate a Big Mac in like 20 seconds.
Like swallowed?
No way.
Yeah.
So what?
Oh.
I don't even want to imagine what that looks like.
Check it out. Raina is crazy on YouTube and Instagram, but yeah, she got it down in 20 seconds.
Like in front of you?
No. So in front of me, last weekend, I watched her eat 7 quarter-pound burgers from Seven Brothers next door.
Okay.
In 14 minutes.
Ugh.
And I also watched her eat 5 pounds of noodle soup in 4 minutes.
Within the same setting?
Same day.
Oh, man. Competitive eaters.
And she's super skinny. Right? I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't get it either. I barely eat anything and I blow up. She eats what I eat in like a week and a day, and I don't know. Maybe she just goes to the gym a lot, but I just can't see myself downing a Big Mac.
20 seconds.
Way off topic there.
Yeah, I didn't mean to take us off topic, but I will say that the point here is that, not only is it third-party risk, now it's third-party AI risk. And I think that's important to note. We will cover that in another episode, but, I think that as more, things are automated through artificial intelligence, the risk is just increasing exponentially. So that we have to have some controls, some visibility, and some action around how we are provisioning and using AI in our third parties.
Yeah, but in this case, it had nothing to do with AI. It was just somebody didn't change a default password, or maybe that was the password they're like, oh, I can't remember. Let me change it to 1234556.
It was probably Peg and HR.
Yeah.
Just
I can never remember this. I keep hitting the forgot password every morning. Maybe let me just make it easy.
Yeah, that's honestly probably what happened, because if no one called tech, or no one called security, and you got Karen in HR or Peggy, I don't even know what the average.
So that's that's a case for SSO, a single sign-on, and at least having some kind of IDP that's corporate controlled.
So does that mean they don't?
Well, it doesn't sound like it, right? Obviously, there's no multi-factor if somebody just put in 1234556.
Yeah, because so the article says the default password. I don't necessarily see 1 through 6 being the default password. I see it as being an easy password that someone just entered.
Yeah, who knows?
So
all speculation, but could be.
Maybe if you're trying to distance yourself from the situation, you say that it was a default password, but really it was someone that just put an easy password. One of the top 5.
There'd be a log. There should be logs on who changed the password when they changed it, right? So they could go back and forensically look at it.
Okay, so
and shouldn't the default password be Ronald McDonald's house or something like that? That just makes more sense to me in this case.
Should have been, or the Hamburglar, that guy.
Grimace 1.
Troy is now officially the Hamburglar. Because he loves the McDonald's hamburgers.
Let's go.
Okay. Well, so I guess to kind of like summarize is, don't use default passwords. Don't say they're default if you just set them through 1 through 6. Don't use QWERTY, admin, password 123. If you're the person that does password or has the same password as your previous one with an exclamation at the end of it, naughty.
Or just changing a number.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Password 1, password 2, password 3.
Password 4. Yeah. And then when you get
your
to the
kid's
9,
name, your puppy's name, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes.
Yeah. And then answer those crazy Facebook quizzes. What
magical dragon are you? Yeah. Okay.
What's your dog's name? What's your mother's maiden name? Yeah. No, don't do those.
But maybe it's important too, where technology teams need to be aware of purchases that are made that are outside of IT that leverage another a B2B partner, right? A third party partner. So maybe, I mean, that sounds like a lot of work for someone or for teams of people potentially, but that, to me, if you told me everything that we talked about today, my first thing is someone did something that they never called security to make sure that the right controls were in place and the right governance was wrapped around this service. So maybe there should just be a way that the businesses kind of approach their purchasing where they say, hey, we're spending this amount of money through these partners. It has access to this information. Just pass it by security. And if you're in a security department or you work on a security team and you don't have that right now, maybe it's something worth putting in place, because by not having that, clearly even McDonald's can fall. And if you think about it, regardless of the size of your company, you put something like that in place, you may not, be on the news like McDonald's was, but you might have actually saved the company millions of dollars by simply just adding a 10-minute phone call, maybe on a weekly call with the procurement teams. So bottom line is, if you're in security, you should talk to the other departments in your organization, like procurement, like sales, like HR, and at least understand what they do, what they're buying, and if the companies that they're working with have to have some sort of governance.
I'm going to use Troy's line. Security is a team sport.
Yeah, it is.
Absolutely.
So maybe we'll just leave it at that. Is just get out, meet your peers, understand what they use, what they need, and how you can support them. Because chances are, if they're not in security, they're not thinking about these things, and you are. And if you are in security, it just helps you protect the business. And by protecting the business, what are you protecting? Your livelihood.
Yeah, it all comes down to communication. We talked about communication. All right, if you're not talking, you're not collaborating. You're going to be in silos, and you create these gaps and you create these risks for the organization.
Yeah, that's bad news when the threat actors find out that you're not talking to your peers. So I think today's episode was pretty good. The McDonald's part was a little sus, but whatever.
We can cut
I'm ready
that
for
out.
a Big Mac.
No. We need people to like just randomly drop off a bag of cheeseburgers at Troy's. Quarter pound
Yeah,
cheese. So any closing thoughts? I think we covered a lot today, and
Yeah, they all had a single theme, pretty much. Third-party risk and identity. I don't think we really planned that, but it worked out well.
no. And then so next week,
Yeah, and I think that. Sorry, I was just going to say, I
you
think
can go
third-party risk is a good theme for the episode, and I want to make sure that we're all looking at it and thinking about not just your third parties, but your fourth parties. So, who are your third parties doing business with? Because that downstream effect can certainly, pop up and bite you as well. We saw that in the Log4j back in 2021, and we see it from time to time. Your supply chain. Let's talk about the entire supply chain, not just your third parties, but that entire supply chain of how you get and use technology. I know it sounds like a lot. But if you have a third-party risk team, make sure you're empowering them. If you don't have a third-party risk team, look at getting some of this software that can help you automate that process.
next week we're going to be at Black Hat. So we're going to be there Sunday through Friday, getting after it. So if you want to come meet the DTF squad,
Hey, hit us up. Drop a comment or email us.
we'll definitely be around.
We'll have some stickers to hand out.
We got stickers. We got hugs. We got high fives. Just come say hi.
I might even have some cheeseburgers to give away. You never know.
The Hamburglar strikes again. Okay. Well, so till next time, we'll see you next Monday. Thanks again for listening.